Well, a guy like Brock Lesnar, man, I swear that if Brock Lesnar got into mixed martial arts right out of college, well, went college wrestler, right into training, really learned striking, and learned slowly, like took some small fights.
Like John Jones did.
Yeah, and then, but really learned striking instead of like spending all that time doing WWE, which I'm sure he made a load of money.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, good
Way
for
more.
him. That's all great and everything like that, but man, I think he could have been one of the all-time greats. I really do.
Like any other sport, mixed martial arts have already exceeded common boundaries of popularity and reached almost every person in the world. Vivid, flashy and charismatic athletes of elite level that made a great contribution to the industry's development also played their part. In today's video, we'll talk about the path of one of such athletes whose destiny from childhood was intertwined with hard work and did not promise a successful career on the global arena. Get comfortable as you are about to see a beast incarnate, a true destruction machine in many sports, a simple farmer and also a family man. Brock Lesnar and his complete story. Please don't forget about the likes, comments with forwards and subscribe to the channel. Here we go. Childhood and early years. Brock Edward Lesnar was born on July the 12th of 1977 in Webster, South Dakota, in a family of German descent, Stephanie and Richard Lesnar. By the moment of his birth, the boy was the third son after Troy and Chad. He also had a younger sister, Brandy. Brock's entire childhood was in accordance with a routine for people who hold the household and work at a milk farm from morning till night. The guy was accustomed to hard work literally from birth. Weekdays of little Lesnar continuously taught him discipline and determination. During the same period, the boy learned one simple thing: there is no result without effort, and only complete immersion in the process will deliver the fruits in the future. Even though Brock's parents had their own farm, the Lesnar family wasn't rich at all. They didn't even have their own TV, and the only things the kids were exposed to at such a young age were labor and studying. That's how the future world champion reminisces that time in his Death Clutch book, which we will also refer to further on.
I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't grow up like a lot of people think I did, as a spoiled athlete who got his ass kissed all the way through school and was catered to and coddled. I grew up poor, on a dairy farm in South Dakota, and had to work for everything I have.
The main entertainment for the kids, besides constant household duties, was sport, especially wrestling. At the age of 5, Brock began to grasp the basics of this sport, and the guy's parents deserve the most credit for that. As Lesnar says in his book, his parents were not like the neighbors and other farmers who didn't want to do anything else apart from taking care of livestock all day long. They inculcated their children with a love of sports and competitions. They schooled their temper and tried to provide them with everything they could. Subsequently, all the kids of Stephanie and Richard Lesnar managed to achieve decent results in various disciplines, but the most prominent and successful athlete happened to be Brock.
Parents put a lot of pressure on their kids to succeed in sports. Whether they mean to or not, some kids can handle the pressure and live up to their parents' expectations. Other kids can't, and they fail. It wasn't like I was being given a choice. I had to win.
And that's true. From the moment when the mother of our hero took him to wrestling training at 5 years of age, she constantly traveled with him to the competitions and tried to temper his steel character, not accepting excuses and insisting that he has to be the best. That's how Brock quoted her.
Second place is like a defeat.
On top of that, nobody scolded the guy for the losses that happened every now and then. Sure, Lesnar didn't see joy or support, but he was told that if he doesn't want to feel what he feels now, next week he has to win. And when it was happening, nobody celebrated. The boy was told that he is doing great and that in 7 days he has to do the same thing, and they treated that like a matter of course.
My mom didn't accept any excuses. If I lost, it was my fault, period. I couldn't blame a loss on the referee, and there were no teammates to let me down. It was just me and the other kid on the mat. One winner, one loser. The outcome was up to me and me alone.
Besides wrestling workouts, Brock tried to grow in many aspects, which was supported by time and strict work ethic developed over the years. But let's make one thing clear straight away. Looking at Brock Lesnar now, it makes a strong impression that he was that big from birth, and it is not the case at all.
Coming up through the high school ranks, I was never a monster by any means. I was just trying to grow into my own skin. But that struggle became a huge positive for me. When I had to wrestle as a 103-pounder or a 152-pounder, I developed the moves and quickness of a lighter weight wrestler. When I got to heavyweight, I still had those moves and I was fast. Had I always been big, I probably would have now skated on by strength and size alone, and I never would have learned to move like I do now.
Sports merits and achievements.
They brought in guys like Brock Lesnar, and next thing you know, it's Minnesota really believed they were supposed to be national champions. We found, I like to say found, Brock Lesnar in North Dakota at the Bison Open, and he was on a mat across the gym, and he was wrestling a guy from Nebraska who just beat Shelton Benjamin, who was our All-American heavyweight, and I was on the other side of the gym, and I could hear boom, boom, and and people were literally like, you could hear them kind of in an uproar, and I looked across, and Brock was throwing that Nebraska guy around, and he pinned him, and I looked across the gym, and Jade looked back at me, and we're like, what is that?
Throughout the years of competing, a teenager amassed many awards and prize-winning places. For instance, in high school, he took the 3rd place at the Wrestling Championship of the state. Then he enrolled in the Bismarck College State, where in 1997, being a freshman, he took the 5th place in the National Junior College Athletic Association in the 275 pounds category. In 1998, he won the championship in the same weight class. After 2 years of studying, Lesnar moved to the University of Minnesota with a wrestling scholarship, where he lived together with his future colleague Shelton Benjamin. To combine training regimen, making money for food and accommodation, and also classes in the university, and his dream to win the National State Championship, Brock had to work from morning till night, share a small and dirty attic in the house of his acquaintance, and ask his fellow students for books as he himself couldn't afford them. One particular case that happened to be a turning point in Lesnar's career and made him who he is today deserves a special mention.
Just as I was settling into my routine, Jay Robinson called me and said there was a problem. They were trying to get me enrolled at the U for the fall, but my junior college transcript was 24 credits shy of the minimum for eligibility to transfer. Are you kidding me? I was pissed. All I could think was, you guys had all my transcripts and you saw what classes I was taking. I'm 19 years old. You're the wrestling coaches. This is something you should have seen right away. But there they were, sitting in Jay's office, and he's telling me I'm 24 credits short. Can you believe that? After all that I had been through, I wasn't about to kiss my dream goodbye. I wasn't going to let the system beat me. I was going to take control of my own destiny. Unfortunately, summer sessions had already started at most schools.
Luckily, in Susanville, California, there happened to be one institution with the help of which Brock managed to get the needed credits. Yes, it took time, money, and stressing, but it was worth it. In 1999, he ultimately managed to get into the national team of Minnesota and secure a spot in the wrestling team. His first run for a desired victory was unsuccessful. He lost to Stephen Neal, taking the 2nd place. Then began the competitions before the Big Ten Conference Tournament, where at first Lesnar lost to West Hand with a score of 5-4. This defeat kept him on the alert, and the guy couldn't find any peace. He trained like a maniac and had only one goal in his head and nothing else.
When I look back, though, that loss was the best thing that could have happened to me. It made me work harder than ever before, and it made me focus on the Big Ten journey, which was the last important match before the NCAA championships. 2 weeks after my only loss, I won the Big Ten championship by beating West Hand in the final 2-1.
A whole year went by since Brock Lesnar lost to Stephen Neal. This time, he had the last chance to become the Division I heavyweight champion. On the way to his mere opportunity, he went through many trials, obstacles, and injuries that are impossible to list even in a couple of paragraphs. Before the actual event, the guy couldn't sleep for the whole night, and finally the moment came.
This year, I know the feeling, and I know what's to be expected, and I want to have fun tonight. I just want to have some fun and enjoy myself. It's my last collegiate match, and why not just lay it all out there and have fun with it.
The following lines are from his book.
64 guys were invited to the NCAA tournament. After several matches, 62 were done, and the stage was set. Brock Lesnar versus West Hand for the third and final time. And let me tell you, it was a nail-biter. We wrestled our asses off and ended up with a tie. So the match goes into overtime. Still, no winner. When we got to the second overtime, I won the coin toss, which allowed me to choose to be on the top or bottom. I knew I could ride West Hand, but I chose to go down. I wanted to explode out of there. Your best chance of getting away from your opponent is right off the whistle. It's the element of surprise. I tried to beat the whistle and Wes stopped me. As our match continued, I went to stand up, but Wes pulled me down. I tried to switch, turned him around with a hip heist, and escaped with 9 seconds left. 1 point Lesnar. I did it. Everything I worked for, all that sacrifice, the dedication, the pain, the hopes and dreams of my family who had sacrificed along with me. This was the moment we spent years fighting for. All that effort culminated in one brief moment when I was officially declared the NCAA Division I heavyweight wrestling champion.
I knew it'd be close. I didn't want it to make it that close. I didn't want none of that, I wanted to get the first takedown, but I'll take the win. I'm so happy. I've worked hard. Wes is a competitor. I've enjoyed wrestling Wes, but I know I deserve it more than he did.
In the end, Brock Lesnar finished his amateur career as a 2-time NJCAA All-American champion, the 1998 NJCAA heavyweight champion, 2-time NCAA All-American champion, 2-time Big Ten Conference champion, and the 2000 NCAA heavyweight champion with a record of 106-5 in just 4 years of college. Transition to WWE and sudden success.
Brock is a freak of nature, and there's no other way to describe him. He's the most talented, most gifted athlete I've ever seen in my life.
Look like a killing machine, don't I? Born to fight to kill, but ready to die, but I never will.
After fulfilling the dream of his life, Brock Lesnar rather quickly changed his course. Despite his physical attributes, experience, and accolades in wrestling, the future pro wrestling star did not want to continue doing wrestling and participating in Olympic Games, which were taking place exactly in the year of 2000. After finishing his studies, the guy made a firm decision to stop living in poverty and constant debts. He wanted to monetize his potential as soon as possible. Back when he competed in the National Collegiate Athletic Association, he was noticed by some of the agents of the biggest sports entertainment organization, WWF, or World Wrestling Federation. After short negotiations with Brock's lawyer, who was provided to him by his college, the parties agreed to have a meeting. That's how Lesnar himself motivated this decision.
I hadn't even watched 5 minutes of pro wrestling in my life. All I knew was that I was a poor kid with student loans and I was being offered more money than I'd ever seen in my entire life. Brock Lesnar was off to join the circus.
The career of the next big thing in the World Wrestling Federation marked the beginning of something new and unique in the entertainment industry. In fact, the mere opportunity to sign the contract with such a giant on the market and at a young age was a big luck in itself. What will turn your world upside down overnight and make you an idol for millions of people. Especially if we remember those times when wrestling was distant from all these PG restrictions. The viewer would sit at the TV or buy a ticket to another show and simply enjoy the spectacle. But every industry has the other side of the coin. And if you don't have a clue of what we're talking about, here's the quote from Brock.
As Vince and his team were explaining what I could expect from life in the WWE, JR leaned over the table, looked me dead in the eye, and said with his Oklahoma drawl, "Mr. Lesnar, there are 3 things we take very seriously in this company: faith, family, and federation." I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, so I just nodded. I sure got it after a couple of years on the road, because by then I thought I'd lost my faith. I didn't have a family because I was on the road 300 days a year, and all I had was the federation. That's how Vince McMahon ends up owning all these guys. All they have is that company, that business. All they have is what Vince allows them to have. He owns their careers, and their careers become their lives. So he owns them. It's a vicious cycle. These guys sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice. Then they make it, which means they have to work 300 days a year in a different city every night. That's when they lose their homes and their families. They end up working themselves to death, paying for homes they rarely visit, for kids they never see, and for ex-wives, and then ex-wives' homes.
Lesnar's debut on the screen took place in March of 2002. Before that, Brock went through a 1.5-year training and became a professional in an absolutely new discipline. He talked about all the delights and understatements in his business years later, but if we look at it from the perspective of a casual viewer, he was the new destroyer, new conqueror, and idol for the wrestling fans. On August 25th of 2002, at the age of 25, he became the youngest WWE champion in history by defeating Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the title bout at the SummerSlam show.
When I won, the first thing that went through my mind was when I saw my parents backstage for them to come up and congratulate me, and my mom was shaking and smiling, and then I wanted them to be a part of it.
Throughout the years of his wrestling career, Brock rose to the very top abnormally fast. He had time to share the ring with many legends, including The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, John Cena, Kurt Angle, and many others.
I have great respect for Kurt Angle. Put it this way, in 1996 when he won the gold medal, I was graduating high school. I mean, he was the best of the best as an amateur wrestler. And he was a guy that I wanted to be like, but also wanted to wrestle and also wanted to beat. Just to see a hang with him, you know.
The impression he made on the bosses of the company already back in his wrestling years grew much bigger since Lesnar arrived in the WWE. His physicality amazed absolutely everybody who had an opportunity to witness his talents. Think about it, a 6'2" and 290-pound monster moves like a freaking lightweight and tosses huge guys around the ring with enormous power. But the trump card of Brock was a technique called shooting star press. It's a reverse flip from the third rope that shocked absolutely everybody at the arena. As such techniques are common for smaller athletes, and here we see the huge heavyweight perform that. But one time, when he performed in the main event of WrestleMania 19 in a match against Kurt Angle, at the very end of the evening, Lesnar did this technique to get the victory on a high note. At least it was his intention, but everything turned out differently. As it was the end of the match, wrestlers were tired and the ropes were slippery from sweat. And as a result, Brock couldn't finish the spin in the air and landed flat on the ring. Moreover, he slammed his head into Kurt's body and injured his neck. This almost ended his career and Lesnar's ability to move.
Yeah, there's still human beings in the ring flying around risking their lives is what's going on. I mean, if you can't see that, you're very ignorant. I mean, there's, you know, I wrestled many matches, got injured. You know, there's a high risk in pro wrestling. I mean, that ring is not just, you know, mom's California king-size bed with some baler twine going around it. I mean, you land, you know, it's a physical ring, you know. And these guys are going out, and I was one of them, going out and slamming people and coming off the top rope and doing all these things, and I got injured for it, you know.
Money, fame, popularity, loud screams and constant cheers from the arena in every new city. All of that is great, of course. Who would have rejected that, right? But he went for the deal with the organization for the sake of one single goal: make enough money to provide his family with a decent lifestyle and do everything to never be in need. Well, the further narration will be exactly about this topic. Leaving the WWE and aftermath. Lesnar's first year in the major wrestling organization can't be called anything short of a breakthrough. In just 1 year since his debut on the screens, Brock turned his life around in the most cardinal manner. He worked untiringly and performed a lot and earned respectively perhaps even more than all other guys in the organization combined. On top of that, his fame also reached an unbelievable level. Thanks to a proper push, active promotion and hype off of established names in the industry, the young rookie was turned into star-killing machine of the new generation, so to say. Every legend of wrestling fell before Lesnar because it was beneficial for business, and Brock in particular. The longer he stayed at the top, the more often he appeared at different shows and performed in the main events. Checks for performances were coming on a regular basis since the former college student signed the contract and figured the meaning of faith, family, and federation. But no matter how far Lesnar was from his career ceiling, he knew that he had to leave, and the sooner the better. No matter what conditions and pay he had, he didn't like the idea of performing till 50 years of age on a regular basis and risking his health, not accounting for a bunch of other traumas and injuries.
As my first wrestling mania was approaching, I was already feeling the toll of life on the road and in the spotlight. I was hurt, dating back even before I dropped the title to the big show. My ribs were broken and they hurt like hell. I had a torn PCL in my right knee. I was flying to a new city every night, drinking more and more vodka and washing down more Vicodins, all just to dull the pain. It got old real fast. I kept thinking to myself that I was living a life that my mom and dad wouldn't want me living, and there was good reason for that.
Well, I think that was the early years of me when I was a young performer in the wrestling ring. You go through things in life such as you become rich and you become famous, and you're naive and you're young, and to top it all off, you're traveling 360 days a year. Although the wrestling is fake, but the things that go on in the ring is still a non-forgiving environment to be in.
Actually, he was very lucky as he met the right people on his path, who managed to get to Brock with an idea that sooner or later, the body will begin to give up. And no matter how good of a spot you are in, you have to leave it at the right time and give it to the others. Because the routine enwraps you, and the professional wrestling routine is a very dangerous thing, frankly speaking. Many people still don't realize what wrestlers are going through if they manage to break out from local organizations and get to such giants as WWE. First of all, as Brock said himself, your life is fully controlled by the company. Your entire career is directly dependent on the organization's decisions that is not always interested in your own opinion when choosing the gimmick and other attributes that will push you and associate you with this activity. Secondly, working as a WWE wrestler is never limited to a strict schedule of appearances at weekly or monthly shows. Like many other athletes, wrestlers are touring with their matches and performances in hundreds of countries and cities every year. There are not many part-timers in wrestling. Oftentimes, it's the veterans who already dedicated their whole life to prepared lines and constant gimmick switches over the years. The bigger portion of money for the business comes from a young legion that wakes up at a new place every day for more than 300 days a year. It turns out into a real Groundhog Day with regular moves to new hotels, rented cars, and service personnel for the sake of a couple tens of minutes in front of one or another city's crowd. And thirdly, it is an extremely dangerous sport. Those people who are at least a little bit familiar with this industry will attest to that. History knows many athletes that had to put to rest not only their careers, but also their normal life due to accidents and excesses that happen at a certain moment. Apart from training and personal life, wrestlers take incredibly vicious bumps every night, from various heights and distances to the object. Of course, the level of show and spectacle speaks for itself thanks to the professionals in charge. But it doesn't dispute the fact that all these flashy pirouettes and vivid spots look terribly dangerous. And in fact, it's actually the case. Ask any ex-wrestler with at least 10 years of experience and you'll be surprised how many micro-injuries and how much damage this person went through. Performing with a 5-2 or 6-1 schedule in the first team with active appearances at house shows, you will act like a magnet with a cumulative effect, who is forced to live on painkillers and maybe even more potent substances, as here comes the new day and the new viewers are waiting for you.
I could easily have ended up like some of the less fortunate. I had been popping pills for a while just to kill the pain of being on the road, or of injuries that never really healed. And I started drinking vodka, lots of vodka. I can't even tell you how much for sure, but it seems like a bottle every 1 or 2 days with a couple hundred pain pills each month to go with it. You want to know why there aren't many stories in this book about my pro wrestling days? Because the truth is, I don't remember a lot of that period of my life. Yeah, salesmen travel and they are gone a lot too. But they don't get body slammed by 250-pound men or tear up their knees by landing a backflip off the top rope, or have their ribs crushed or get concussed, or have their arms twisted out of the sockets each night before they head to the airport. Pro wrestlers do, and they're expected to heal on the plane, get a few hours of sleep in a hotel, then show up looking good the next night in the next city.
A long tail of injuries, understatements, increasing anger, and other manipulations that the organization did not shy away from resorting to did not leave Brock any options. One of the days he came to McMahon's office and looking him in the eyes said that he wants to leave the WWE.
I know Vince was pissed off. In his universe, I was ungrateful. I turned around and spit in his face. But it's not like he shouldn't have seen it coming. How many times did I tell him I needed time off? How many times did I tell him I wasn't happy with the life or what it was doing to me? Vince always had his stock reply, "Brock, you're so much tougher than that." But it wasn't about being tough. It was about having a life. A year or two bouncing around town to town, bar to bar, girl to girl, Vicodin to Vicodin, vodka bottle to vodka bottle is not a life.
After that conversation, the company began to gradually prepare the grounds for Lesnar's disappearance from the TV screens and stripping him of the title. In the scriptwriter's idea, closer to WrestleMania 20, where Brock was supposed to have his match with Bill Goldenberg, they had to start a feud that would lead to an upshot in the main event. In the heat of a working season, Vince McMahon let his employee know that he's willing to let him go with peace, with a very subtle but. Brock had to sign a termination of employment agreement, and here he made a mistake that will have a severe impact on his karma and mental health in the future. He signed without waiting for the lawyer's response.
What I didn't know, because I didn't wait to hear back from my lawyer, is that while my WWE contract had a 1-year non-compete clause, the release I signed was much different. Just to avoid the hassles of lawyers negotiating and everything that happens when you're leaving, I signed a release that stated I couldn't appear for any wrestling, ultimate fighting, or sports entertainment companies anywhere in the world until mid-2010.
Just imagine, with one scratch of a pen, Brock Lesnar set up himself more than anybody else. He just turned 27, and now because of one single clause and a sign, he will be unemployed for the next 6 years, and the peak of his career will take place on the bench. In the end, after the most boring match in the history of WrestleMania, Brock left WWE in spring of 2004. First of all, he entertained the idea of changing direction. His desire to start a career in the NFL was popping up from time to time, which is why he couldn't keep still. Some connections from the past and the status he gained thanks to wrestling helped Lesnar to talk to the right people and negotiate a potential opportunity. All he had to do was to train hard and nothing else, as everything was dependent on the final showcase and the evaluation of his abilities. For a while, everything went smoothly. Brock was getting in shape and looked great with other experienced players. But one single morning crossed everything. The reason was a road accident Brock got into on his motorcycle, suffering severe injuries for any human and athlete in particular. The only thing that saved him at that moment was a solid muscle frame that prevented the worst from happening. The recovery required a lot of time and money, which automatically took away an opportunity to do American football. On top of all that, after leaving the WWE, difficulties in Brock's life only kept on piling up.
All of a sudden, my problems were mounting. I missed the NFL by an inch. IRS problems, a legal battle over my visitation rights regarding my daughter Mia, no money coming in, and not that many options left because I signed that stupid non-compete clause with WWE. I had no one to blame but myself. My lawyers warned me not to sign that non-compete agreement, but I was in such a rush to get out of there, I got impatient and put my signature on that piece of paper. With all these pressures piling up, one on top of the other, I was depressed. Every day I was drinking more and more vodka, chasing down more and more Vicodins. That's exactly where I was in WWE, except now I wasn't pulling in big money anymore. I was quickly burning through what money I had, and I had no clue what I was going to do next. I had walked away from my wrestling career, so that door was shut. Thanks to the non-compete clause, so was every other door too.
Things were getting really bad. After bad luck with American football, Lesnar began to go over the options on what to do next. A bunch of many problems almost dragged him into another abyss, due to which he got that tattoo on his chest with a sword to the neck. His personal lawyer told him that the Japanese organization New Japan Pro Wrestling is very interested in signing him.
I didn't even know who Inoki was when I had been training with Brad for probably 3 weeks out at Brad's house, Brad Ring, and I didn't even know he had this meeting set up for me. Brad knew that I was going to meet with the WWF office, and so Brad, being the guy that he is, he didn't want to force anything on me, but he just told me that the New Japan office was coming and they wanted to meet with me. And I had no clue who Antonio Inoki was, and Brad put me in the ring with him, and we started shooting on each other. And Brad was, it was almost comical. And I had no idea who he was. And Brad was just in the back of his mind, playing a joke on me, and so me and Inoki wrestled for about an hour and a half straight.
Really?
Just doing submission stuff and trying to make each other, pin each other and submit, and it was kind of comical. And then at the end, Brad informed me on who he was and what was going on, and so yeah, he played a pretty big rib on me. So
next, he arranged a meeting with Vince McMahon to try to negotiate the conditions under which he could theoretically come back. But the treatment from the organization got only worse, which was evident during the conversation.
Well, I had a ton of problems and a tattoo that symbolized the sword I felt at my throat. But I wasn't going to let anyone talk to me like I'm a piece of shit. Vince was talking to me like I was some low-life jerk-off who had nowhere else to go. What Vince never understood about me is that I am, at heart, still a poor kid from that farm in Webster, South Dakota. Yeah, I lived the life of a rock star for a few years in WWE, but I knew I could be happy with my future wife no matter what I did for a living or how much money I made.
In the end, Lesnar went all in. He arranged a meeting with Inoki, the representatives of the Japanese organization, and began to prepare for war with WWE. As soon as the news of Brock's appearance at NJPW popped up on the internet, the lawyers of you-know-who began to work to the max. Brock also did not leave himself on the sidelines and issued counterclaims referring to the illegal status of a non-compete clause. It was an unforgettable experience in the life of our hero, which eventually made him the person he is now.
Hey, just the cost of living was hard enough to manage, but I was funding a lawsuit for my freedom. I knew I couldn't back down, but paying all these legal fees was bleeding me dry. I had no income, and everyone was scared of the big bad monster WWE and their legal tactics. I can see how Vince beats all these other guys into submission. He almost did it to me.
It was an even tougher time, filled with many different circumstances combined all together. Same performances, but on the other side of the world, which implied systematic flights, specificity of wrestling in NJPW, which is designed for a more brutal spectacle, and as a consequence, severe injuries, continuous court trials, which can turn a regular person's life to hell, let alone the athlete with shattered nerves, damaged health, and frantic state caused by all these reasons. Brock lived in this infinite circle till February of 2006.
WWE claimed that my demand for freedom was outrageous. I thought WWE's offers were insulting. We kept going back and forth, and I just wanted to walk out and go home, but the judge had ordered us to hash things out this way. So we finally worked out the outline of a deal. Settling the case was the right move to make, because if it came to trial, and even if I won in court, there would be appeals and more delays, and I just wanted to be done with it all and move on with everything. WWE was motivated to settle because they didn't want a public court declaring their non-compete clause to be illegal. That would open the floodgates and cause them all sorts of problems with other wrestlers who might be thinking about leaving. I've been warned by my lawyers that I can't go into detail here about the term of the settlement because it's confidential. What horse shit. I made some compromises and so did WWE. In the end, we both got a deal we could live with. There, I didn't reveal any specifics, but you get the point. WWE didn't lose face, and I was a free man. With my whole life ahead of me and the ability to choose how I wanted to earn a living so that I could feed my family, all I had to do now was make the decision regarding what I wanted to do.
Mixed martial arts.
That's an understatement. Now, we've seen you over the years as an NCAA wrestling champ, a World Wrestling Professional champ, an NFL workout, back to Japan for more wrestling, and now mixed martial arts. What in the world are we talking about here?
I can go where the money is.
Well, nothing wrong with that. But you know what you're doing in the ring. This is not like a Vince McMahon orchestrated situation here. This is the real deal sort of stuff here, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's June 2nd. I've been training for a year. for this, and, it's an opportunity for me to take my amateur wrestling roots and combine it with jiu-jitsu and boxing and to get in the ring and to beat somebody up, hopefully, instead of going down to First Ave.
A decision to move from sports entertainment to real fighting was quite an easy one for Brock. Actually, if we really dive into his story, already in his student years, even before winning the NCAA championship, he had an opportunity to start an MMA career and perform as a fighter with a solid background in wrestling from like 20 years of age. Just imagine what version of Brock would we know if he broke into the fighting game right from the start. But let's not get distracted. Closer to the end of his contract with the wrestling organization, Lesnar constantly thought of how he would do martial arts and used all of his aces that he was developing from his very childhood. After finishing legal wrangling with WWE, he almost immediately began to search for people that would help him to join the new industry.
When I decided to become a fighter, there were certain things I had to accept from day one. I'm an athlete and a wrestler, but that doesn't automatically make me a great mixed martial artist. To get things to the top of the sport, I was going to need a lot of coaching.
Eventually, Lesnar picked the gym of Pat Miletich in Bettendorf, Iowa. Pat was one of the pioneers of MMA and he was greatly respected in the industry. Not only was he a former UFC champion, many of his students had time to try on a championship gold on their waist, such as Matt Hughes, Tim Sylvia, Robbie Lawler, and others. For some time, he trained under his supervision and showed decent results. Despite that, after a while, he decided to leave Miletich, not because he was unsatisfied with the level of his competence, but because he wanted to get into a proper shape as quickly as possible. Lesnar couldn't wait to compete, but he was not a fool to go in there without a needed preparation and get destroyed. He wanted every worker and coach to focus exclusively on his abilities, and it's impossible to do in big gyms, so he decided to arrange his own camp with particular people and personal space. Besides the goal of realizing himself in terms of sport, Lesnar was driven by desire to make as much money as possible in business.
If you have your own training facility and everyone is dedicated to the goal of making you the best, you have a better chance of reaching your full potential. There's a lot of money at the end of that rainbow, and I just wanted to reach that pot of gold. From the moment I decided to get into mixed martial arts, I knew I wanted to be in the UFC. That's the big league, the only place to be. The UFC is the most professionally run organization, and the people there have the resources to put on big-time fights for big-time money. No rinky-dinky Bush League bullcrap for that organization. It's first class all the way.
Despite his fame, worldwide popularity, and already solid achievements in the sport, the world's best league was not in a hurry to give Brock attention and offer him a contract.
I had my goals set, but I also had a problem. The UFC saw me as a WWE fake wrestler. Yeah, I had a name, but I had no MMA experience to speak of, which meant I had to start somewhere else. Believe it or not, the road led me right back to doing business with a company in Japan.
Besides many subtleties and issues that Brock had to encounter like any other beginner fighter, his main criteria for evaluating success in the first professional fight was the pay and organization of the future bout. At that time, Lesnar's lawyers worked 24/7 negotiating with different promotions, and in the end, they stopped on the worldwide known K1. Soon, they signed the contract and Brock began his preparation, and even brought over Greg Nelson. He wanted to perform as soon as possible, but despite his desire, the circumstances were not in favor of resolving the issue. Initially, the world was supposed to see Lesnar in MMA gloves already in summer of 2006, but while he was training, the organization couldn't find him an opponent even by October. Moreover, by that time, representatives of the company did not report for signing a contract to broadcast the show through the PPV system. Brock did everything in his power to get into the upper league, but back then it was evident that he competes at an amateur level. In fall, it became known that K1 signed the Korean kickboxer and a fighter 7'2" tall named Hongman Choi, that giant who fought in Pride against Fedor Emelianenko. And it happened to be Lesnar who was supposed to welcome him at a new place, which was targeted for May of 2007.
I felt alive again. After all I had been through, it didn't matter who they put me in front of that first fight. I had a new lease on life, and that wasn't going to fail.
As you know, the Beast Incarnate ultimately didn't fight Hongman Choi. A month later, at the event, K1 notified Lesnar about another delay. The reason was that they couldn't make a reservation for the Dodgers Stadium in Los Angeles that they counted on. The fight was rescheduled for June. As Brock said, the organization promised him the biggest show in MMA history and assured that the arena would be packed with 100,000 people. They expected that the entire Korean population in LA would show up to see Big Head, and WWE fans would come to support Lesnar.
Unfortunately, I never got the chance to knock Big Head out because someone else beat me to it. About a month before our fight, the idiot did a K1 boxing match in Japan, took a big shot to his big head, and went down like a felled tree. Scheduling him for an event so close to our fight was just plain stupid of K1.
Overall, the California State Athletic Commission concluded that Hongman Choi is not physically able to fight. As a replacement, the promotion offered our hero another South Korean, Min-Soo Kim, literally at the very last minute. Kim was a silver medalist at judo at the Olympics and Lesnar accepted the change of opponent with incredible enthusiasm and impatience.
I don't have any fears.
Now he wants to prove he's got what it takes.
What's the biggest difference between professional wrestling and MMA? MMA is real and wrestling is fake. For anybody that doesn't know that, you're living in a cave. And now, hopefully, you'll see me as a professional fighter.
Brock Lesnar versus Min Soo Kim.
Brock Lesnar's debut in mixed martial arts went in the best way possible. The appearance of Beast Incarnate at the new arena drew the attention of a lot of people in the crowd and behind the scenes, and best believe nobody was left indifferent. As a result, Lesnar's first MMA performance ended within a minute and 9 seconds. The silver judo medalist missed a takedown already at the start, couldn't get off the ground, and suffered a devastating loss via TKO.
Well, all my preparation has been due to my amateur wrestling success. I got a great group of guys behind me: Marty Morgan, Jesse Wallace, Kurt Kozlowski, Greg Nelson. I want to thank everybody for coming. And it's fireworks.
That's how Brock described this in his book.
I have to give it to K1. They probably put 50,000 or so people into the Coliseum on a beautiful June evening to watch me beat up Min Soo Kim. They did their best to create a spectacle, including my grand entrance from the Olympic flame at the top of the stadium. My job to me was easy. Wait for the referee to say fights and go right after Min Soo Kim. Poor bastard had no idea what he was in for. I took him right down and pounded him out. The fight lasted 69 seconds and I walked away without a scratch on me. Better yet, because the fight was delayed several times, each extension of my contract cost K1 more money. All in all, I pocketed a lot more money for what turned out to be a minute's worth of work in the ring. This is the business for me.
UFC debut. After the most perfect debut in the history of the sport, Brock Lesnar couldn't wait to have another fight, and not just somewhere, but in the world's best league, as our hero today put it.
In WWE, you need to get Vince McMahon's attention. In the UFC, that man is Dana White.
However, he clearly understood that one win against not the best fighter wouldn't be enough to show up in the main MMA organization and put his name on the map. And UFC itself didn't really want to deal with sports entertainment, as the fighting sport was perceived by many as a real thing in comparison to scripts and planning in wrestling. Lesnar made an unusual move. He bought himself and a couple of his lawyers and the best seats at one of the tournaments when Randy Couture fought Gabriel Gonzaga, and decided to draw attention and spark a conversation in the media. Throughout the entire show and between the fights, the UFC was showing different celebrities on the big screen: footballers, actors, singers, basketball players, and other fighters. But Brock didn't pop up even once. As a result, the tournament came to an end. People began to stand up and gradually move towards the exit. Staff began to turn the lights at the arena down and pack the equipment, while Lesnar was standing next to the octagon, frantically thinking of what to do.
That's when I said to my lawyers, "Boys, I'm hopping the rail, and no one better try and stop me." Lawyers being lawyers, they just started getting ready for any legal issues that might come about because of my move. Deep down, they loved the fact that their client had such balls.
In the end, Brock jumped on the floor near the cage, pushed through the crowd and got past the security. As he got to the octagon, he realized that he was standing right behind Dana White. He patted him on the shoulder and introduced himself. They found an empty room backstage and Dana sat down to talk to him and his lawyers. By the way, we should highlight that Lesnar gave UFC president his due for not trying to wiggle. And that's a very good trait for a promoter in the business with real fights. At a certain point, Dana asked Brock straight up,
What makes you think you can do this, Brock? What makes you think you can be in the UFC with the best fighters in the world?
And he responded to White,
Don't look at me like I'm an entertainer thinking he's a real athlete. I am a real athlete, an NCAA Division I heavyweight champion. Pro wrestling just offered me a chance to get out of debt and make a lot of money right out of college.
The negotiations were very brief, as Dana White had to do a post-fight press conference, so Lesnar tried to be as honest as possible in the given situation. He explained to White that he doesn't have time to go through all these small organizations smashing their fighters like bugs. Either he becomes the champion or he does not. All he asked Dana was for one chance, and the best thing is that UFC couldn't lose in this deal anyway.
If I win, the UFC has the golden goose. If I lose, someone else is going to become a star at my expense. Either way, my fight will draw money. MMA fans will pay to see me get my ass kicked. WWE fans will pay to see one of their own take on the best UFC has to offer. There was no downside to the idea.
Dana White acknowledged that everybody would win, but he also knew that he had to throw Lesnar in the shark tank. If he just punched the guy from WWE, it could have looked like a script or a setup. The fight had to be against a good opponent. Nobody has easy fights in the UFC, and Dana didn't want to make Brock an exception only to build his reputation. But Lesnar did not wait on any favors. He wanted to start straight at the top. At that time, the world's best league tried to figure out what to do with Frank Mir, a former heavyweight champion who some time ago got into an accident on the motorbike and tried to return to the top of the sport. It was a perfect option for Brock and the UFC, and the league responded positively, giving Lesnar a 1,000,000-to-1 opportunity.
I was getting one chance in the UFC, and I planned to rip out whatever heart Mir had and feed it right back to him. I was going to make a statement, and I was going to make a lot of money doing it.
As a result, Lesnar got an opportunity to debut at UFC 81 in February.
This guy's for real, he's no joke.
He's a big dude. That's a legit heavyweight.
Brock gets to go back to his roots and compete again, and I think that's what Brock wants to do. He wants to win again. He wants to have that feeling of being a winner and a champion again.
The first thing that's going to go through Frank's mind is holy this guy is legit. I can just picture his eyeballs getting big as I dump him on his head and he doesn't know where the hell he's at. Knock him on his ass, mount him, and pound his head in the mat.
The build-up for the upcoming event was phenomenal. Posters with Lesnar were hanging everywhere, who was about to perform in the main promotion and face a real challenge. After one single fight in his career, he got a huge chance and wanted to use it to the max, but everything didn't go the way it was initially planned. Despite a hard pressure, many shots and convincing domination in the beginning of the round, after 1.5 minutes into the fight, Brock Lesnar lost to Frank Mir by knee bar in his debut.
Well, I came out trying to pressure Frank. We knew in the past that maybe we questioned his heart, and I was just trying to get a bunch of shots in on him. Left my leg there. We've been practicing that. It's like, you go back to the drawing board every day in the workout room. No excuses. He's a top-notch jiu-jitsu guy. He got me tonight. He's a better fighter.
But the most interesting thing here is the words of a former champion who almost lost to Brock in the very first minute of the fight.
Still though, he played into my game by taking me down. That's what I was hoping for. That's why I was trying to kick him in the legs to convince him to come down to my game. I knew that if I sat there and tried to shoot on him, there's no way I'm going to get him down.
Right.
So it actually worked out pretty well. And then, when he first got on top, very fast, explosive, hard elbows. Some of the hardest shots I've ever taken, really. I mean, it hurt. I mean, one of his elbows split me open instantly. So,
Right.
But it doesn't matter. It's, it doesn't who wins the first 10 moves, it's who finishes the fight,
And that's how Brock commented on this fight later on.
I know I handed Frank that victory. I gave it to him. He didn't deserve to win. He's not a better fighter than I am. On his best day, he's not half the athlete I am on my worst. I gave him my leg on a silver platter, just handed him that submission. That was my loss, not Frank's win. I screwed up.
Ascension. Either way, Brock Lesnar managed to impress the bosses of the organization with his performance and subsequently stay in the UFC for a bit longer. That upsetting loss to Frank Mir was bothering him and he prepared very hard for his return.
I knew I'd have to work my way through some people to get back to Frank, but I didn't care who they put in front of me. I wanted Frank Mir again, and I wanted him in the worst way. Every thought I had about Frank was consumed with bad intentions.
Soon, he was offered a new contract, and at UFC 82, the matchmakers announced that a famous former freestyle and pro wrestler will face an ex-champion in the face of Mark Coleman. They were supposed to fight at UFC 87 in August, but closer to the set date, the legendary Hall of Famer pulled out of the fight and got replaced with a no less dangerous opponent in the face of a former Pride fighter, Heath Herring.
Heath Herring was no slouch. He was a fighter with a tough guy's reputation that he earned by fighting top-level guys like Fedor, Nogueira, Congo, Crow Cop, Belfort, and Kerr. Heath was 43 and 27-1 before our fight. That's a lot of experience in the fight game. This was a man who knew his way around every inch of that octagon. For me, it was only my second fight in the UFC.
I'll be in the great state of Minnesota, in my backyard. That's huge for me.
Brock Lesnar's the guy who was a huge superstar in the WWE. He was their #1 guy, and he just got up and walked away one day. Left a bunch of money on the table and just got up and walked away. He had 2 dreams. He wanted to play professional football, and he wanted to fight in mixed martial arts.
Why MMA? It's something I wanted to do for as long as I can remember. Standing there and actually being face-to-face with another human being and getting ready to throw down with them is, to me, a natural feeling, I would have to say.
We put him against former world champion Frank Mir. Brock came out and handled him and put him down and was absolutely smashing him.
I'm hungry to win in the octagon, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail and do everything I can to win. I've got a lot to prove yet. You know, this next fight, hopefully I can showcase it.
By the way, Brock is the only fighter in the world's best league for whom they had to create special 4XL size gloves. And since we're talking about it, in these particular gloves, he knocked Herring down, broke his orbital, and ultimately avenged his loss in the debut via unanimous decision.
Can you see me now? Can you see me now?
After a convincing victory over one of the best fighters of that time, the hype machine of the UFC turned up to the max. The noise around Lesnar continued to grow, and neither matchmakers nor Dana White wanted to miss out on such an opportunity. Initially, there were talks that Brock was supposed to face the French Thai boxing master, Chick Congo. However, it didn't go any further than that, as the new MMA star was about to meet none other than the current heavyweight champion, legendary Randy Couture. A surprising but very big title fight was targeted for UFC 91 in November.
Randy is the godfather of MMA, a living, breathing legend who is still one tough old bastard. Randy was upset with the UFC when negotiations for a match with Fedor Emelianenko fell apart, and Randy's people told him he could retire from the UFC while he was still a champion, and then go fight for another organization. From what I understand, the whole idea was for Randy to go elsewhere and get a piece of the action and a bigger payday. The UFC and Randy ended up exactly like me and WWE. Everyone was suing everyone else, which means a lot of time and money was being spent. With no return on that investment, Couture settled his lawsuit with the UFC and agreed to defend his title at UFC 91 on November 15, 2008 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. I could not ask for a bigger and better opportunity in life.
What a great opportunity, that UFC heavyweight title.
I am younger than him. I am bigger and I am stronger. He's faced those demons before, but I don't think quite the demon that I am.
He's been able to control a lot of people because he's a great wrestler. He won't be able to control me. He won't be able to control Brock Lesnar. What a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm going to seize the moment, and I'm going to seize that UFC heavyweight title.
Everybody knows the outcome. Brock Lesnar finished the legendary champion in the second round and became the new heavyweight king.
That sounds really good. I can't believe it. can't believe it. I want to thank Dana, the UFC, and I want to thank this guy, Randy Couture. He's a lot of balls to take a year off and come back and fight a young buck like me. I got the utmost respect for Randy Couture.
It was a truly significant achievement, especially for a guy who got into mixed martial arts only at 27. Anyway, even such a huge victory couldn't distract Brock Lesnar from his main goal, which didn't go anywhere.
Beating Randy Couture for that title was a great moment for me, but in the back of my head, all I could think of was getting my hands on Frank Mir again. As much as winning the title was the greatest professional moment I'd experienced, losing that first UFC fight to Frank was still bothering me.
Lesnar couldn't wait to get a rematch, and considering his last victory and reaching the top, it was more than feasible. But the world's best league didn't want to organize the second fight as it is. Instead, matchmakers put together Frank and Antonio Nogueira for the interim title, so that nobody would have any questions regarding the rematch after that. As a result, Frank Mir got his hand raised and went straight at the champion, Brock Lesnar.
Frank Mir, the man who was born with the golden horseshoe up his ass, was once again handed a victory. He stood in the octagon against someone else who was much more of a man, much more of a fighter than he could ever hope to be, and he got an easy knockout because his opponent had no business competing that night. Frankie Boy was crowned the UFC interim heavyweight champion, and he should have retired on the spot because his next step was to go up against me.
Lesnar's reaction to the victory speaks for itself. He smiled at the camera and expressed his gratitude for such an early Christmas gift. But let's get back on track. The set rematch had to be rescheduled from the initial date due to the interim champion's injury, which nudged the world's best league to organize the fight in the main event at the anniversary tournament, UFC 100.
He cried uncle. He said, "Stop, I can't fight no more." I mean, there's nothing more humiliating than tapping in a fight.
Listen, I am the UFC heavyweight champion. I beat the former title holder, Randy Couture. The belt that he has isn't even real.
I have some interesting tricks for Lesnar he hasn't seen yet.
This fight is nothing about respect. This fight is all about revenge. Frank Mir beat me in my very first debut in the UFC. This is for me and my revenge to get back something that he took away from me.
I saw exactly what I wanted, a rematch against Frank Mir.
His ground and pound's really not, it's annoying because he is a strong guy, but he only lifts his hand 2 inches from your face and drops it down real fast. It's like having your little sister jump on your back and pulling your hair.
Frank went around bragging about how he had beaten me, which was one thing, but now he was walking around like it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to beat me again, and that he was already a champion. He's walking around with a fake title belt, and he thinks he carries the same meaning as the real title. Frank was lucky to get a fight with Big Nog for the fake title when Nog was sick as hell. Frank was talking about how my punches felt like the ones his little sister would land after jumping on his back when they were kids. Really? I had made hamburger out of his face during the 85 seconds I dominated our first fight, and now he's going to talk to me like I'm some bum? Frank was so arrogant, and it made me just want to punch him in the face so hard that I knock his head clean off his shoulders.
And he fulfilled his revenge. Brock Lesnar hammered Frank's head into the canvas, earned a brutal TKO win, and defended his heavyweight championship.
Frank Mir had a horseshoe up his ass. I told him that a year ago. I pulled that son out and I beat him over the head with it. Woo! I love it. Keep going. Keep going. I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to sit down with my friends and family. And hell, I might even get on top of my wife tonight. See y'all later. I'm just kind of speechless. You know, I put my heart and soul in this. I want to be a great fighter. And at the end, I want to be a great entertainer. I don't care, you know. People pay good money to watch us get in there and go at it.
This victory was the peak of Brock Lesnar's career in the mixed martial arts, and not only that, and then he almost died. Breaking point. When the storm of emotions, critique, big headlines and hype around UFC 100 flattened down, Brock took a short break. As he rested with his family, newborn son and friends, he returned to training and working process. But something went wrong. Here are Lesnar's own words.
When we got back to civilization, I got word that Dana wanted to defend the title against Shane Carwin. I took the fight. Why? Because I never turned down a fight with anyone the UFC has offered. You want me to fight Shane Carwin? Then I'll fight Shane Carwin. I'll fight Shane Carwin and I'll defend my title against him the same way I plan on doing to every top challenger you put against me. But when I started training for the fight with Shane, I could feel that something was wrong. I was exhausted all the time, tired, worn out, no energy. There were days when I would get home from training and literally could not get off the couch. I had been battling some stomach problems for a while, but I didn't think too much of them and just went on. That was a big mistake. I should have listened to my body.
Eventually, it led to our hero to a serious problem. His health was getting worse by the day, and the fight day was getting closer. Brock had to make a choice. He wanted to be transparent with the UFC because they already began to promote the fight. But Lesnar knew that he can't continue training and stay in shape. Something was wrong with him. Very wrong. He was not used to backing down, and rescheduling the fight with Shane Carwin was one of the toughest decisions in his life. Brock talked about the situation with his wife, Coach Marty, and lawyers, and everybody agreed that there was no other way. He was sick and had to take care of his health. The local doctor diagnosed him with mononucleosis. It seemed logical. The training camps exhaust the body. Immune systems might fail. Lesnar could have gotten a disease like mononucleosis. It always happens to the fighters. And now it happened to him. At least that's what he thought. Sure, he was upset with the fact that he let so many people down, but taking care of health had to be the main priority. He decided to take his family to Canada and relax outside of the city to give his body an opportunity to recover. But barely could they settle on the west side, Brock woke up at night with terrible pain. He never felt that bad. Sweat was pouring by the liters, soaking all the sheets. He had a fever. Lesnar couldn't even remember where he was. Soon, he fell asleep, but then woke up again and said to his wife that he needs to get to the hospital as soon as possible.
I couldn't stand up on my own. That says something right there, doesn't it? Brock Lesnar, the ultimate fighting champion. You know, baddest dude on the planet, and I couldn't even stand up. I couldn't help myself. Couldn't get from the bed to the car to save my own life.
Luckily, his brother Chad was at the house, who happened to be strong enough to carry Brock. He put him in the car and they rushed to the hospital like crazy. But no matter how fast Chad was going, Lesnar still wanted to break his face as it felt like they were barely even moving. His brother could step on the gas with both of his feet and push the car to its limits, but it still wouldn't be enough. After a while, they finally reached a hospital in Brandontown, where he was immediately given morphine. Acute pain went away, but he still didn't know what was going on with him. When his condition stabilized, doctors took an x-ray of his stomach, but it doesn't show the tissue and a complete picture. Doctors knew that and wanted to do a CT scan, but the hospital had only one device and it was out of order. They promised Lesnar to fix it by 11 a.m. next morning. 8 hours later, the device still wasn't fixed. Brock's condition was getting worse. Morphine caused a severe headache and the situation seemed to be desperate.
I put my faith at doctors in the hospital and I shouldn't have. It almost cost me my career. It almost cost me my life.
A day later, nothing changed. Doctors only continued to tell Lesnar and his family that a needed detail for the device was on the way and will arrive soon. And at this moment, he and his wife decided that they needed to leave this place and move to the city of Bismarck, which was 4 hours away. To say it was a hell of a ride is a terrible understatement, but when they got there, they immediately found themselves in the hands of true professionals. Brock got his antibodies in less than 20 minutes, and after a few more minutes, the doctors gave him the right diagnosis: diverticulitis.
I was told I had a hole in my stomach. I was being poisoned from the inside with my own body waste. No wonder I felt like death.
Luckily, the staff at that place knew who Brock Lesnar was and what he did for a living. He was given 8 hours, after which, under the condition that the drugs wouldn't work, they would perform a surgery and remove a big part of his intestine, which will mean the end of his career. Forever. During the next 7 hours, he had a 40-degree temperature. Doctors began to consider the surgery. Things were getting really bad and his life was at stake. With 15 minutes left before the term, the fever began to go away. Brock managed to avoid a radical intervention.
If the doctor who made the decision to wait hadn't been put on duty that day when I'd arrived, I would have been using a colostomy bag for several months and would have had to undergo several surgeries. He made a brilliant decision. He and his 28 years of GI experience saved my life. He gave me a chance to have a good life with my wife and children, and I'll never forget that. Thank you, Dr. Brudera. I will forever remember you for what you did for me and my family.
Though Lesnar avoided the surgery, the hole in his stomach didn't go anywhere and continued to kill him. He was literally dying. He spent the next 11 days in the hospital without food and water. He was fed with a solution with boatloads of painkillers. He lived as if he was in a daze.
I wanted to live. I wanted to get out of that hospital, and I wanted to be with my family. Everything else was secondary to me. I was going to be a farmer. No kidding. Everyone still asked me if I was scared about losing my UFC career, never having a chance to see my title reign the whole way through. I wasn't that concerned about it, because when I was in that hospital bed, I had already resigned myself to the notion of being Farmer Brock.
Luckily, things really got better over time. Gradually, after leaving the hospital and having a couple more examinations in one of the best clinics in the world, Brock Lesnar started coming back to normal. A proper recovery program, progressive training overload, and the heavyweight champion came back into the game. The Fall. By July of 2010 and UFC 116, Brock Lesnar was ready at around 70 to 80% of his previous condition. During that time, the World's Best League held another bout for the interim title between Shane Carwin and Frank Mir.
UFC asked me to attend Carwin vs. Mir fight so we could promote the title unification fight, which ended up being scheduled for July 3rd in Las Vegas. I knew Dana and Lorenzo were happy because either Carwin was going to knock Frank out and go 12-0, or they could promote the return of Brock Lesnar against this undefeated knockout king, or Frank Mir would get lucky again and we'd go for 3, the big rubber match between me and Frankie.
Carwin knocked Frank out in the very first round and earned an opportunity to step in the cage with the undisputed champion. And Lesnar was happy about the situation more than anybody else. He couldn't wait for his return as he knew he was still able to compete and that he will retire only on his terms.
I'm 3 fights in and I'm the UFC heavyweight champion. I got 2 years of training, 3 years at the most. I'm just at a whole nother level for this fight. I really am. I'm just scratching the surface, baby, you know?
It was a good fight, Shane, but that's the wrong belt you're wearing. I got the championship belt. That's the bottom line, buddy.
Shane Carwin was a very dangerous knockout artist with a perfect record, and in the first round, he was extremely close to beating Brock Lesnar. But beginning from the second one, he gassed out and lost via arm triangle. Second title defense for the Beast.
Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you, a humble champion, and I'm still the toughest SOB around, baby.
There was a lot of action in there. It wasn't by me, but damn it, he was strong. You know, we had a good training camp, and we trained for 5-round fight. The guy's never been out of the first round, and I thought, well, one of us can take it there, and it's probably me. I should have performed better in the first round. Not happy about it. A win is a win. The first round, he was better than me in the first round, but I showed a lot of heart. I showed, you know, what a true champion can be, and that's, you know, there's going to be guys come along to test you, you know.
The next defense for Beast Incarnate was targeted for October in the main event at UFC 121. his next opponent was another undefeated prospect in the face of a prime and more than ever menacing Cain Velasquez.
Listen, you're not better than me. When I get done whooping your ass, I'm gonna go drink a Corona and eat a burrito just for your Hispanic heritage, all right? How about that? I am the heavyweight champion of the world, but that's not a pressure. I'm not, it's not a title defense in my mind. This is just a fight. Cain Velasquez is not the guy to beat Brock Lesnar, and you will find out come fight night.
So I'm here with Vitor Belfort. Who do you like this weekend? Brock Lesnar or Cain Velasquez?
We've seen Brock before. He doesn't like to get hit on the top. So I think after the third round, Velasquez, if he can power, he can. But Velasquez is so tough, so I stick with Velasquez.
Who do you like this weekend? Cain Velasquez or Brock Lesnar?
Yo, mama. I just can't take you seriously dressed like this Euro trash. Look at him, right? Euro trash going to a club, except before we had this tucked into his boots. He's going to hit him on that big cinder block head, and Brock's not going to like it, and he's going to go fetal, and Cain ain't going to get tired like Shane did and punch himself out, because that guy could go and go and go.
Right. All right, so I'm here with Bones Jones. Obviously, big fight this weekend. Cain or Brock? Who do you like?
Third round TKO stoppage, just kind of what he's been doing to Frank Mir and everyone else, just taking him down, just being too big, overwhelming, and just gassing him. Even though Cain's known for his cardio,
right?
That's a lot of man to have.
No,
on top
it's
of
true. No, that's true.
As it became clear a bit later, Lesnar's health problems didn't go away completely. Sure, it can't be used as an excuse, and we're not trying to do that. We just operate with the facts from accessible information. Brock continued his recovery while training. In the end, it led to him losing to the contender closer to the end of the first round and a loss of a championship.
Why did I lose that night? Plain and simple. On that night in that arena, Cain Velasquez was a better fighter than I was. That's an old expression about falling off a horse. You get back on and you ride that bad boy into town. I'm not saying I'm happy about losing the UFC title, but I am saying it helped me focus on how much I want to be a champion.
Well, I just actually watched the fight a week ago, and wasn't sure how to approach it. And I think it boils down to last year I had a lot going on in my life. I fought through diverticulitis, made my comeback, fought Shane Carwin, and then fought Cain Velasquez. As I watched the fight, I could see that that there was probably I just wasn't able to overcome Cain's. I really don't know what happened. He beat my ass. That's what happened, if I put it that way. But it's one of those things. I don't like to lose, and you dust yourself off and get back on the horse, and here I am. It's been able to work out. I don't know how it worked. I'm fighting the guy that if I would have beat Cain, I'm fighting Junior Dos Santos. I'm doing the ultimate fighter. Somehow I was able to land on my feet throughout this, and I suffered a loss, but I'm learning a lot from it. I made some changes in my training camp, and you got to just evaluate things, and hopefully these things are going to make a difference.
After the win over Brock Lesnar, the new champion was supposed to fight Junior Dos Santos, and that gradually gets us to the interview you just watched. The world's best league knew that the Beast and the Brazilian saw the interim belt as a fake one, as long as there is the real champion. And Lesnar made it clear when Shane Carwin and Frank Mir were holding his belt. The UFC came up with an interesting idea and made Lesnar an offer that he couldn't refuse. If he agreed to become the coach at the Ultimate Fighter reality show, in the end of it, he would have faced the other coach. Brock agreed, because the other coach was Dos Santos, and the winner of their match was supposed to fight Velasquez.
I want to be the UFC heavyweight champion of the world again. There are also a few things I'd like to take care of before I disappear and become former Brock. But I like taking things one step at a time. The UFC title is in my sights. I need to pull that trigger first.
But in reality, as history taught us, it happened to be another step further for Brock Lesnar on the way to leaving the major promotion. Sure, he headlined the 13th season of Tough, the one that featured none other than Tony Ferguson, who won the finale and brought another wave of hype and fame to his star coach. But the further it was, the worse things were going for the former heavyweight king. His fight with the Brazilian that was set for June 11th was on the verge of cancellation due to another spell of diverticulitis. On May the 27th, Dana White announced that Brock needed surgery and doctors removed 12 feet of his large intestine. Lesnar got replaced with Carwin, who lost to Dos Santos, and the beast disappeared from the radars for some time. Closer to the summer of 2011, to everybody's surprise, Lesnar announced that he is ready to return to the octagon and fight for the #1 contender spot in the heavyweight division. His opponent happened to be prime Alisdair Overeem, who was a former Strikeforce champion and, one could say with a full certainty, at his horse steroid peak in its most vivid and terrifying form. And their fight was supposed to take place on December the 30th at UFC 141.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't look at other people outside of the UFC division and the heavyweight division. You know, I'm not a guy that sits around and ponders about that kind of stuff. For me, I sit around and ponder about white-tailed deer and you know, and hunting and my family and things like that. And not, oh, my dream matchup would be a fight with so-and-so. So, I mean, but obviously, you know, this is a guy that he's threatening. I mean, obviously, you don't get into this company and get into this division if you're not a threat. I mean, this is, you know, this isn't bingo hall fighting, you know, or your local fight stage. You know, I mean, it's the real thing, and anything can happen. So I mean, you got to. I feel the greatest I've felt in a long time, and I've actually just sat and just pondered about how good I feel and how fortunate I am just to be back here. I mean, May 27th of this year, I had 12 inches of my colon removed, you know, and so I don't even know how many months that, you know, has gone by, and here I am. Yeah, I think he's definitely faced a lot of foe, but none like me, and I think that this is my octagon. I'm gonna own that octagon, you know, and I think he'll soon discover that this is the big leagues. Knocking on the door to being the UFC heavyweight champion again. I got this fight against Alisdair, and this guy is not going to stand in my way. There's no way in hell that I'm going to let that happen.
No matter how bad Brock wanted to believe in his powers, he lost to the Horse Master via TKO. After a vicious kick to an already weakened body, and in the post-fight interview, he said this.
I've had a really difficult couple of years with my disease, and I'm gonna officially say tonight was the last time you'll see me in the octagon.
Further career. And one could really believe in that for a period of time. In 2012, Brock Lesnar returned to WWE. Vince McMahon gladly welcomed his former employee back as his success in mixed martial arts kept on being highly discussed. But this time they had special terms. Lesnar became a part-timer, the person who can perform not all year round and has a free schedule. Besides that, he got an opportunity to co-lead and manage his career together with bookers, who personally decide with the bosses what happens to every wrestler. As he came back to wrestling, Brock got a new gimmick, a violent and merciless beast with MMA experience that destroys everybody in his way.
I'm not a superstar. I'm an ass kicker. I am Brock Lesnar. That's it.
If there are some wrestling fans among you, then we will list the main feuds and achievements of Lesnar after his return. He began to headline every SummerSlam from 2012 to the current time. performed a record-setting number of suplexes on John Cena, and conquered the World Championship numerous times. He beat The Undertaker and became the first man to hold him down at Anniversary SummerSlam 30. All the main new titles that were introduced in the future, he conquered them all, including the WWE Universal Championship. Overall, after the second coming into the organization, Lesnar got only more established in the top positions, in the status of a superstar and worldwide athlete.
I was put on this earth to seek and destroy and to hurt people. Is that sadistic? Maybe to some people.
But what shocked the public in the summer of 2016? And here is the interview for ESPN in 2016.
I picked up the phone, I called Dana White and said, listen, if there was any time for Brock Lesnar to come back, it would just make sense that it would be for UFC 200.
Why are you going back in the octagon for UFC 200?
Because I couldn't live with that decision. I don't want to be sitting 20 years from now saying, you know what, son, you should have went and did that. That chapter of my life, I didn't like the way the chapter ended, so I couldn't continue the book and move forward.
5 years later, Brock Lesnar returned to the octagon. On July the 9th, at an anniversary tournament of the World's Best League, he faced the number 8 ranked fighter and a formidable knockout artist, Mark Hunt.
Well, I think it was like day 49 after I left. Like, I can't remember the exact hour. I feel awesome. Why does it matter? I'm here. Yeah, it was now or never. You know, it was if you're going to do it, you know, do it before it slips away. You know, it's been 5 years and it's been a long time. I feel great. I feel like a kid again. I feel really good. I'm excited about this, and training camp has gone so well. Everything's just great. Everything's lining up.
When the tournament took place, Brock Lesnar beat Mark Hunt via unanimous decision. He was confidently taking the Samoan down, controlling him on the ground and utilizing ground and pound. At first, it looked like the beast didn't just appear for one single performance, but seriously considered getting back in the title picture.
I believe any man can do whatever he wants if he puts his mind to it. I've been out of this game for 5 years, and I stepped back in the cage and trained for six weeks, and you know, I think I put a good beating on Mark Hunt tonight. I think anything's possible, ain't it?
And one didn't even need to speculate. A few weeks after the tournament, the anti-doping agency announced that Lesnar failed the doping test, and the results of his test showed the usage of clomiphene, due to which the outcome of the fight with Hunt was overturned. After that, Brock got fined with $250,000 and was given a 1-year suspension of participating in the testing pool. Since then, he continues to perform in the main wrestling organization and make great money, entertaining the encouraged fans every few months. Sure, there were moments when we were close to the Beast's return to the octagon, like on this footage.
Hey, I'm here with Big Brock Lesnar right after the SmackDown. How you feeling, bro?
Good, man. Good.
That was a lot of fun. My first time getting to watch him do his thing, and he was a beast out there. The people loved him.
Thank you.
Yeah, good time.
Brock Lesnar. If you want to know what it feels like to get your ass kicked by a guy who weighs 40 pounds less than you, meet me in the octagon.
Brock Lesnar just told the AP, be careful what you wish for, young man. Well, Brock Lesnar, first of all, you know, I haven't talked to Brock Lesnar. Even if he came back, USADA, he's got to wait 6 months and be on the program for 6 months. So he'll fight somebody before that. I don't know who right here off the top of my head, but he'll fight again. Listen, I'm interested in whatever interests the fans. You know, Brock Lesnar is always interesting.
Let me tell you something. I walked into this building and watched the heavyweight disasters from the beginning. Nagano's a piece of Miocic's a piece of DC!
But in the end, something always went wrong, and we won't see another fight featuring Brock Lesnar. Epilogue.
Bar none, like the best.
Hey,
So
don't break the table, obviously. I just break shit.
Sorry, man. It's around here. Yeah, but dude, I started like I was fighting as a kid. Like, so we didn't like my older brothers, no joke. And if you like, you know, the local people from Webster, South Dakota will tell you the Lesnar family were fighters. And so I grew up 6 years younger than my two older brothers who were getting out of jail on Monday mornings to go to school because of street fights and you know. So I grew up with that stigma. We went to street dances. I went there to fight. Like that's what we did. That's what I did anyway. And then it was girls after that. Maybe I'll have a couple drinks.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar is a unique athlete in every sense of the word. In his student years, he became the wrestling champion. Then thanks to his charisma and athleticism, he got noticed by the popular wrestling promotion and became its star. After that, he went through an incredible amount of challenges which eventually made him better. He broke into mixed martial arts and managed to conquer the heavyweight championship with 2 defenses, and even now at 46, he is in a perfect physical shape and continues to perform at the highest level. He had a hard life, but it made him the warrior he is till this day. Everything he ever dreamed of ultimately happened. He has a big loving family, a huge farm, many commas in the bank account, and a healthy life. And that's what matters the most. Who knows what his career inside the UFC could be like if it wasn't for his illness. But either way, Brock Lesnar is a legendary athlete, sportsman, and performer whose story can serve as an example to absolutely everyone.
Honestly, it's gone so fast, and it's been... I've separated myself from this life, you know, with my family and kids, and so it's like... I'm like Superman. When I leave the house, I put on a whole nother, you know, face and aura, and I get home and I just check out, and so it's like now we're 23, 25 years into this, aging myself like, holy crap.